Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. Stay for this video if you're interested in expat options or migrating to other countries, which is the less fancy word for being an expat, being an immigrant in a country that is not your own. I got an email just, I think it was yesterday. It says, Fernando, some years ago, YouTube algorithm recommended your channel to me. It isn't often that I'm grateful for a YouTube algorithm, but I'm grateful for the content you provide. To date, I own all 3 of your books. I just received Bugging Out and Relocating. Fernando grew up in Miami, and my first wife, well, he goes on into a bunch of personal stuff. He's talking about Bugging Out and Relocating, which is this book specifically for bugging out and relocating. Not only off in other countries, offshore, relocating outside of the United States. I did a lot of research for relocating within the United States, and also the book is based on relocating in general, the things you're going to be looking for. There's things that I've recommended here that probably don't hold as well now. If you look at New Zealand, for example, gun laws have changed a lot since I first published this book, but the concepts still apply. The strategy, the approach, the things to look for, they're very much still valid. So if you're thinking of relocating, but maybe this book is going to be making you understand that probably staying where you are is not that bad of an option, or moving within the United States, which is something I address here in the book as well, is maybe a better idea than going to a foreign country entirely. Yes, and you also have Surviving the Economic Collapse for survival, preparedness on the economic aspect, and practical, realistic survival, bugging out, and street survival kills is the book that I have there as well. I was just checking out here that the book in the French version, I'm working on some other versions of my books. French version is doing very well, so thank you so much for the French-speaking community. So he talks about some personal stuff that I'm not going to be talking about here. Specifically, one of the things I'd like to recommend when it comes to women meeting online, especially women in Latin American countries. If you're from the United States and you contact women online from other countries, Latin America, Russian, wherever that may be, especially in countries that are in less developed countries, let's put it that way, be very, very careful with that. There's probably a good chance that you'll find someone that has more of an economic incentive in mind. So be very, very careful with anyone you meet online, especially women, as an American man considering of moving to maybe South America or Latin America. Then he goes on about some of the things he's been looking at, and finally saying that he's been considering the option of Panama, right? Panama offers a generous pensionado visa, granting permanent residence, and I can get to Miami on a 3-hour direct flight. To be eligible for pensionado visa, you need $1,000. Yes. So let's get right to the topic of the video, which is specifically, being an expat in general in Latin America. Now, the first thing I like to say here is that usually I really don't advise that sort of thing. In my experience, being from Latin America, from South America myself, and knowing how life is in general in Latin American countries, you're probably not going to be finding what you want. It's a lot of marketing involved, and yes, Panama City would be specifically one of the better options that a lot of people end up being happy with it. I know, I actually know a doctor that he's from Argentina, lived in the United States for quite a bit, quite wealthy as well, as you would expect, being a renowned surgeon, and he, last time I heard, he's living happily in Panama City. He's Argentine. He's extremely fluent in his native language, which is Spanish. He knows Latin America quite well. It's different from someone that is, a gringo from wherever in the United States dropping in Latin America. You're not used to that kind of life, and probably your Spanish sucks in spite of what your friends tell you. It's simply usually the way it is. So be advised that usually I don't recommend that. Usually I think that, and I explain it in the book, probably moving within the United States, you're probably going to be finding some other state that offers what you want. Having said that, yet again, the big boy rule still applies. If you really want to go for it, by all means do it. Life is short enough as it is so as to not try these things out. Give it a year, see how it works. Don't make any drastic decisions. Don't sell everything you own. Keep in mind that there's a good chance that after a year you'll get over it and you'll realize that's not everything that shines is gold, and you're probably going to be heading back. I actually know a few of those cases of people that moved to Panama or some other Latin American country, and a few months later they were going back home. Okay, now let's look at some of the advantages of living in a place like Panama. The retirement visa is quite good, lots of benefits. Panama consistently ranks among the top 5 retirement destinations in the world. It's very much promoted as such, and it has good options. Resident retirees can avail, especially for retiring. Keep in mind, expat, being an immigrant, retiring, it's not always the same thing. Maybe you're a young guy looking to start a life somewhere else with, getting a wife, starting a family. That's different from someone that is retiring and hasn't got any, professional ambitions, work, or anything like that. And he's not worried about what kind of schools are going to be sending my kid in damn Panama. How expensive is that going to be? I'm going to be telling you right away. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be very expensive to send your kid to a decent school in Panama. So, 50% off entertainment, 30% off bus, boat, and train fares, 25% domestic airline tickets, 20% off medication, 10% off healthcare. So all of that is good, all incentives. Panama uses the US dollar, so it's going to be very simple for you. Here is where we get into one of those points that is so-so. The cost of living is low in Panama, especially considering all the benefits to life here. A couple can live well on $2,600 a month or less, including rent. Okay, I'll argue that quite a bit, just from the get-go. I know that's always exaggerated how cheap it is to live in Latin America in general, may that be in Argentina or Panama or whatever it is, compared to living in the United States. Yes, there's people that live for a few bucks a day in Panama. You do not want to live in that kind of environment with that lifestyle, with that quality of life, like the typical local Panamanian does. You just wouldn't take it. It's completely different. It would be extreme poverty compared to the standards that you have in the United States or any other developed country. So usually these you want to double. Probably it's more like $3,000-$4,000 a month rather than $2,000. It's probably a lot closer to $4,000 than $2,600. You'll see sun, yes, fantastic weather. This also comes tropical climate means bugs, means heat. If you're overweight, if you have health problems, that may not be all that pleasant. So if heat bothers you, humidity bothers you, keep in mind that's going to be life for you in Panama. So 2-bedroom condos, yeah, these things about the rent prices and so on, these are probably underscored quite a bit. If you look at some of the disadvantages, you see this right away. So some of the disadvantages is the language barrier. Again, if you don't speak the language, that's going to be a huge problem. You're going to be sticking with the expats or immigrants over there, being an immigrant in another country, but you don't speak the local language. That is usually a big issue. And don't expect everyone in Panama to know the language. Yeah, the guy from the hotel will. Probably a guy from a nicer restaurant will as well. But that doesn't mean that everyone you come across will know. Certain items are super expensive. Yes, of course. A cell phone, a car, all of these things that you take for granted, they're going to be costing 2, 3, 4 times as much. Anything fancy, drive an Italian car, drink Japanese whiskey. Yeah, this is going to be very expensive for you. Life moves slowly. You have to get used to the bureaucracy, how everything is done the corruption. These are all things that most Americans simply do not comprehend, don't understand what life is in that way. Some laws are very different in our countries. Yeah, take seat belts, for example. In Panama, only the people in the front seat are required to wear seats, and that's just a minor detail. The legal blood alcohol level for driving is 0. You cannot drink at all. And this is something that, this sucks. Well, know the local laws. The climate can be difficult. The bugs can be quite, there are creepy crawlers everywhere. Yes, you're talking about a tropical climate. Parties, yes, Latin American people are loud like I am. This is the way I speak normally. So we're quite loud, and that sometimes bothers people, or people get scared or intimidated, and you're not angry, you're just talking. That's just the volume that you're used to. crime of opportunities are common in the cities. I would add to this that crime outside the cities or in some of the other areas, it's even worse. So I wouldn't be worrying that much about crime of opportunity. I would be worrying about the very dangerous, very violent crimes that take place all over Panama. And you're probably going to be safer in some of these, nicer towers, buildings, or gated communities. That is the only place where you're really safe in a place like Panama. Internet access is sometimes unreliable and expensive. So we have an example of expect to pay as much as $250 per month for a 10 megabyte connection in areas that only have satellite connection. So $250, 250 US dollars a month of internet. Is that expensive? Yeah, for me that's quite expensive. Maybe you're super wealthy, then $250 of internet is not a big deal. But no matter how you cut this is a lot different from the $2,600 a month I was just told I was expecting to spend so as to live in Panama. When we go back to this number of I'm going to be living very well in Panama, live well on $2,600 a month. Well, $250 a month already went away on internet alone, and a kind of crappy internet. I have 300. This is 10 megabytes. That's quite bad. And in terms of infrastructure, power outages, this is going to be very common in Latin America in general, and something that, if you come from a developed nation, is simply not what you're used to. So power outages, having a generator. Oh, I'm going to be having a farm in Panama. Good luck with that. You'll be taken advantage of. You'll be robbed because you're the damn gringo in a farm in Panama. Be ready to deal with that. There's people that make it. There's people that just don't quite find a way of figuring it out. But living off the grid in Panama, that is going to be very challenging. And I'll tell you, it's going to be very dangerous as well. Maybe you're lucky, maybe you're not. But is it dangerous? Yes, without a doubt. So, all things you need to remember. Inconvenient if you only have electricity for cooking and you have power outages. Yes. And the simple reality is the following, guys. There's going to be a lot of people that love living here. There's going to be a lot of people that regret it right away. There's going to be people that you usually need a year. I mean, I've moved around quite a bit. I've lived in different places for years at a time, and you always have pros and cons. You have things that you like from countries. You have things that you don't like that much. Usually it balances one with the other. Some countries are just worse than others, and people's experiences in life are different as well. Maybe someone is super happy about living in India. I'd never live in India myself because there's really nothing for me in a country like that, and I mean no offense. It's just not what I want for my life. For someone else, it may be the most magical, mystical, wonderful place in the world. Now, it's probably going to be the case that you want you want to focus here in Panama City. Why? Because the rest of the country is damn jungle and small little towns and communities that offer very little in terms of infrastructure, safety, security for an immigrant, for an American immigrant. So you're going to be focused in this kind of area, either nearby gated community or something that's kind of close to Panama City. And when you look at Panama City, yes, of course, you drop your little dude and you see buildings, you see infrastructure, you see the downtown of Panama City right there. You have your McDonald's, you have those developments, and it looks quite, lots of typical of Latin America, cables all over the damn place, because apparently digging a hole is just too much to ask. But, all things considered, you see a developed country. Now, there's parts, though, that based on what I know, based on my experience, I can tell you right away, it's not, the entire country is not this. The entire country is not those nicer apartment buildings where expats are probably going to be, looking at right this here, I don't even have streets to drop my Google, Street View. If I'm looking at, outside the city, you already start seeing these things. Very green, keep in mind, tropical climate, but you already start seeing that it's going to be a little bit more dirty. You see the typical football stadium. Buildings are not as nicely kept as on the center of town. I do have a spot there dropping a guy here. This is going to be a lot more like the real Panama that real Panamanians live in. And based on what I know, based on the stuff that I explain in books like Street Survival Skills, if you bought this book and you learn a few of the things I try to pass on to you guys, gates, doors. Why is it that these people have barbed wire and gates all over the place? Because it's damn dangerous. Why is it that you have street dogs, a stray dog there that with no owner nearby? Because there's dogs and dirt and junk all over the place. This is how the real Panamanians live for under $1,000 a month, right? I even see a motorcycle, so it's maybe not that horribly dangerous, because if not, he wouldn't even dare leave it there. But you do see the bars on doors, windows all over the place. So this would be the more typical outskirt of what you see, evangelical church of some sort. Man, I don't know. Latin America is all kind of like the same eventually. So in spite of all, but again, look at the gates all over. This means that the place is a lot more dangerous than you probably think it is. And for sure, you have beautiful places. I don't doubt that one bit. But this is the reality that most people in this country live with. So if you're expecting something completely, a magical place for expats, no, no doubt it's one of the more frequently chosen destinations. So Panama City, it would be one of the typical. Yes, if you're looking to be an expat in Latin America, Panama City would be one of the common recommendations. In Uruguay, it's gonna be probably a lot more expensive, but I like Uruguay quite a bit as well. Panama City, one of the big advantages, trying to close the video with this, is that you can get yourself a concealed carry license. So you can get a gun license, again, specifically targeting the American expat. They know that the typical American expat wants to have a gun, and you definitely should, and you better know how to use it. But you can get a concealed carry license. You can get a gun license in Panama. Of course, you'll need to be licensed. This thing about just going into a store and buying it, good luck with that. That's more of a Middle Eastern thing, not something that you'll get away with here. And don't get anything illegal. This is stupid. And people that think that committing crimes as a gringo in Latin America is a good idea, you're a complete idiot if you think that. You're going to be ending up in a Panamanian jail for doing that. You have the option of getting a handgun legally in Panama. Go with that without a doubt. So that would be my advice, guys. Be very careful. Give it a try. Panama is probably not the worst option that you have. I've heard of people doing a lot more stupid things than that. But I always take that with a huge grain of salt. I mean, if you like the tropical climate, if you want to have that experience as, retiring, I would actually look more here. Portugal, Spain. These are countries where you do have very interesting options, which maybe not going to be as... in terms of price, and maybe even, depending on what you want, maybe not all that more expensive than Panama. And it's going to be a lot safer, a lot more stable, a lot more security. And that, for me, is priceless. But your opinion may be completely different from mine, and that's perfectly fine. Guys, see you in the next video. Take care.